Hey guys! So, yep, here we are again with another... I'm gonna tell you my process, but it's not advice, so don't hold me to it because I'm not published and not qualified to give advice, but it still sounds like advice, but it's just my thing and here we go, ramble kind of thing. Yay! World building. Building is a pain in the ass. I mean, it is fun, it is creative, it is crazy, you can do anything you want and you can just create the most amazing, insane places, and you can just run with it because it is all your creation in your own head and you get to describe it any way you want, right? Kind of. I suck at world building. I will tell you that one for free. I suck at it. Absolutely suck. So most of my stories are set in this wonderful, slowly decaying world that we're in, and just adding a twist to it. So for my NaNoWriMo story in 2018, that feels weird to say, I can't say last year anymore because it wasn't last year because we're in 2020. 2018 NaNoWriMo. It was set in a world which is pretty much our world, but a parallel universe version where witches were real and they were treated with extreme prejudice and kind of like a similar sort of racism that we have today, which is 2020. Why is that still a thing? Rant for a different day. This one witch was then put in a position where she had to take care of human children, which was a big no-no, but that's just how things worked out and sort of her struggles to carry on. An absolute steaming pile of crap, I may add. I enjoyed starting it, but I hated everything else afterwards. I don't know what it was, just the novelty of it wore off quite quickly. The planning didn't go well, the world building was abysmal because I just went with the premise, I didn't have a plan, I didn't have a plot, I didn't try to go off and try to build this world even though it's like a parallel world which we already had. That was my downfall. I thought, oh, but it's just our world with witches. I don't need to world build that much. Liar! Wrong! Because you failed, didn't you? Well, I didn't fail NaNoWriMo, but I dragged my sorry backside past that finish line, and just the idea of even going to edit that story makes my skin crawl, which sucks because I did enjoy the premise and I do want to go back and finish it and start something new with it, and I will eventually. Let's finish this series first. But yeah, that brings me to my current NaNoWriMo project, which I'm still working on, by the way. So again, our world with a bit of a twist where we discover that there are demons lurking in the midst, slowly pulling the strings of this world that we live in. I did not make the same mistake twice. So this time around I thought, yeah, okay, so I don't really need to plan anything too much with this world because I'm not adding another creature or another race or anything like that. I'm just doing this world and this other demon side is discovered, so I only need to focus on the demon side. Wrong. I then needed to figure out how those demons interacted with our world, how different things were influencing each other, etc. And it was a struggle, but I hopefully got there. Like I said, I haven't gone through the editing stages yet, so I don't know if certain bits are coming across the way I want to, but that is a video for another day. But things I did find that helped with this world building and will hopefully help when I do sort of go out of my comfort zone and try to build more creative worlds. I do have another series-ish, maybe, it's just a premise thing at the moment that I do have in mind, which is set in a more fantastical world, and I'm hoping that these things I'm learning now will help me for that. But I've rambled on too much, so let's just talk about the process, shall we? So something I found is that everything needs rules. So for example, if you are going to include something like I did with witches, that means magic. Magic needs rules, magic needs structure, there needs to be consequences. For example, if you're like an Olympic runner, that's great, that is fantastic, but if you have that talent in stamina, that doesn't mean that you can run everywhere, continuously, at your top speed, and just never stop. You would burn out, you would probably break something, your stamina would just vanish, you'd die. So that has to be the same when you include something like magic. There needs to be limits, there needs to be structure, there needs to be rules, and there needs to be consequences. That's just magic as a general example, because that seems to be the one that people go through the most, but then that is a rule for everything. If you're going to include something new, it needs to have a structure and it needs to have a limit. And if you push those limits, what are the consequences? There needs to be some type of structure. I'm using the word structure way too much, aren't I? But that's just an example for cultures and new creatures and new magic. Not only how do they fit into this world, what is their culture. You can have fun with building cultures, by the way. If it's just their culture that you're focusing on its own, then you can do anything you want to, but as long as it has the rules, structures, and consequences. Also, a fun question I kind of discovered when it comes to new cultures and powers and abilities and magic and stuff like that. If they are interacting with other people who don't use these powers or don't have these powers, what is stopping them from just taking over the world? I mean, if they haven't done it, but they have the power to, there's got to be a reason why they're not. So why? I don't know, that was just a fun little question I thought was... That was just a fun little question I thought that I'd throw in just to get the brain juices flowing. Because it definitely screwed up mine. That was the question, actually. That was the question that screwed up my witch story. Why haven't they taken over the world? Because people are mean to them? No! Write better! Moving on. If it's a more historical thing that you're trying to go for, so in a new world, in a new location, etc., and there was a war in the past, or there's been some type of shift in government that is laying the foundation to what's happening right now, don't information dump. I've seen it so often, especially in stuff like the Hunger Games, for example, where it's like,
oh yes, there was this massive war, and then factions, and then segregation, and then games, and then punishments, and now I'm hunting.
Calm down, love, we've just met, you've got to buy me dinner first before you give me your entire life story. I mean, if you do want to include massive stuff like that, then honestly your best friend is going to be a prologue and a map. If your book has a map of the entire location and bits that are boarded off, and maybe even have like little annotations that your character has made to be like, you know, bad place, dangerous area, home, you know, stuff like that, then that kind of gives you a little bit more to work with. So you can have an idea of, okay, these are the areas that you're not allowed to go to, these are the reasons why, but not in a great amount of detail, you just know that it's dangerous. Okay, fine, let's go. Into the story. That is pretty much all you need, because you're already in your character's head where you understand where their home is, where the dangerous bits are, etc. And then you can feed in the reasons why later on, so you don't have to have this massive amount of information just dumped on you. It's the same with a prologue. You can have a little prologue that maybe covers a newspaper article that just like sums up, you know, the beginning or the end of this war, or whatever the event is that sparked off the foundation for where you are now. Just something short, or a conversation between two governments that will, you know, finalise the decision, and then you pick up with your character maybe years after the decision's made. I think you don't need a huge amount when it comes to world building, and that's something that a lot of people, me included, struggle with, is that you do want to have every bit of information put out there so that when people are reading it, they can think, yes, I'm a historical buff of this brand new world, and I don't need any extra information because I know it all already. Moving on with the story and adventure. But if you've given so much information and numbers and tactics and attitudes of different governments and stuff like that right at the beginning, then you're lucky if you've even made it to the adventure at that point, because people will get bored, they will feel overwhelmed, and they will feel like they're reading a history book rather than a story. And that's not what you want. Unless it is what you want. Has anyone actually tried to do like an encyclopedia of just a magical world? I'm pretty sure they have. But that is not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about historical books, I'm talking about stories and adventures. I ramble a lot in these videos, I'm so sorry guys. But if you don't want to do a map or a prologue and you do just want to dive right into the story, then fine, you can do that. There is no one saying you can't, but then you just have to make sure, again, I'm saying you a lot, but this is just my process and I'm saying you to try and like, I'm talking to myself, but I'm not, I'm talking to you guys and I'm sorry, this is not structured. As I was saying, if you don't want to use prologues and maps, then that is fine. Sometimes you don't have access to the tools to make maps and stuff like that, because I've tried and it's hard. You can just jump right into the story. You can just start off with your main character or characters and just go for it. But then you can't be like, oh, let's go to this place. What? This place? We can't go there. You know the reasons why. What reasons why? Don't you know? And then you've gone like 50 or so pages just explaining this one event that happened there. But then your characters are from this place. That's something you need to remember. Your characters have lived here all their lives. They know the rules, they know the structures, they know the consequences. So these mysterious, wondrous things are not going to be so mysterious and wondrous to them. At the end of the day, it's just a matter of remembering this is your character's home. They already know what is going on. You are just the passenger in all of this. So any information that is new or relevant or a bit of backstory maybe needs to be fed in a realistic way. So if your character is travelling somewhere new, then that's where you can feed in the more wondrous and first time experience feel of things. But then if it's taking place in their hometown, then you're not going to need to worry about cultures that are thousands of miles away if it's not relevant to the story. I know it's so hard to plan out this big, amazing world and you just want to explore the whole thing, but if it's not relevant to the story, you can't, because there's no need for it. A fun little trick I found is if you're having a bigger group of people, have those groups of people from different areas. A good example of this is Six of Crows, and I absolutely fell in love with that book. So it's the Grishaverse. It's got so many different cultures and countries that are all just so well done, but we don't get to see all of them, and that's fine, because we have characters that are from those areas in this group, and you get to see conflicting religions, conflicting languages, conflicting ways of doing things, and it really does help with the world building because you get to see an example of this new country without actually having to waste time describing it when you're never going to see it. And it's just, I do highly recommend that duology if you get the chance. So yeah, Six Crows. World building is, as I said earlier, a massive pain in the backside. It is very hard to find a precise way of doing it, which I don't like because I like my structure. But then world building needs structure. It also needs to feel realistic, it also needs to be fed in slowly, and it can't feel too overwhelming. It's a very tricky balance, and not many people can do it right, but that's not to say it can't be done right. I can't do it right. I'll admit that now. Everything I've done with world building has been a struggle, and it has taken a lot of editing to actually get it to a point where it's mildly coherent, I guess the right word is, but yeah, I do struggle, and that's why I'm making this video, just in case any of you guys struggle. So, things that I've taken from a lot of trial and error is, if you're going to have a new culture, make sure that they are relevant to the story, and make sure that they are given the chance to explain their own lifestyle in a realistic and coherent way. Avoid information dumping as much as possible. If you're going to have powers and magic, or new creatures, all that kind of stuff, then make sure they have rules, they have limits, and they have consequences for breaking those rules. And if you do want to throw in something fun, then what if they're so powerful, why haven't they taken over the world yet? If you have a wide world that you want to show a lot of, but you don't have the time to visit those places, have people from those places be part of the story in a relevant way. Prologues and maps will be your friend, but they are not essential. Anything that is new and wondrous to us might not be new and wondrous to the character. No information dumping. Make sure that everything you include is relevant to the story and to the character. I'm sure there are many more rules and regulations about world building, and there are far more qualified people than I to explain them, and I am fully okay with that. At the end of the day, have fun with your world building. Go crazy, get everything that's in your head out on paper, do research on other places for inspiration, and just go full on nuts with it. And then that gives you the chance to look over your work later on and pick out the bits you need, pick out the bits that are relevant to the story, pick out the bits that are important to you. It's going to be hard to whittle it down, but it will be worth it in the end. And that's not to say you can't explore those other places in other books in the series if that's what you're planning, or maybe even try that historical book that we were on about earlier on. Why not? Go for it. Prove me wrong. I'm gonna stop here before I go on even more tangents, if that's possible. It's definitely possible. You know me by now. I hope this helped in some way. Please give me advice. I know there are more people out there who are better advice givers than me. I need the help. I really do. Admitting that now, I need the help with world building, so I want to hear all of the advice you have to give. It's a pain in the backside, but it is so worth it at the end of the day. Okay, happy writing, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.